believe, talks about including cooperative training in our national curriculum so that at primary level, at secondary level, people are already trained and taught about importance of cooperatives. You have a role, I think, to play in lobbying for that, for the inclusion of this in the curriculum, don't you?
Yes. And really, I think this is a thing that I would like to see happen. I remember sometimes back, I think more even like 20 years ago, we were taken for a seminar by the ILO, the International Labour Organization. They have a branch that supports cooperatives. And that workshop, what they wanted us to do, we had met in Namibia, all the countries of Africa, and what they wanted us to do is what you have correctly said, to introduce cooperative education into our school system. In fact, they were starting from very low, even from the pre-primary to primary, then to secondary schools, and then now the colleges and universities.
Yeah.
So when we came back, I remember we endeavored now as Kenyans to put something together, and we go to the Minister of Education. And as we did that, there was that response that, the 844 curriculum is overloaded. Now you want us to
add something
else. It will not work. And
let's encourage you, Prof.
Yes.
Keep pushing that.
And under competency-based?
The competency-based for us universities, we are waiting for guidelines.
Okay.
Because we have to be given guidelines by the Minister of Education and also the Commission for University Education. So once we are given, we shall know when to start preparing our staff, our lecturers, and also revising our curriculum to reflect that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. Professor Esther Gishero is the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Finance, Planning and Administration at the Cooperative University of Kenya. She's been here with us to talk to us about the cooperative movement. We'll invite you again. There's a lot more to discuss.
Yes.
Asante sana.
Good
morning.
Thank
you. Now 8 a.m.
Thank you very much. It was nice.
Spice up your life. The latest news from around the world. 94.4 Spice FM.
Good morning. Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. Council of Governors Chair Martin Wambora says the failure by the National Treasury to release funds to counties on time has affected critical services across counties. This comes as the financial year comes to an end today.
Out of this allocation, a total of 257.1 billion of equitable share, equivalent to 81%, has been disbursed to county. Kenya's sharing 25.1 billion as conditional grants, loans, and grants. County governments have raised 25.5 billion, equivalent to 45% projected owned source revenue. The equitable share balance owed to counties still stands at 58.9 billion.
Three governors from Ukambani region, Alfred Mutua of Machakos, Kivutha Kibwana, Makueni and Kitui's Charity Ngilu, have held a meeting to discuss development projects that they'd want to be initiated by President Uhuru Kenyatta during his visit to the area. Speaking after a meeting in Makueni County, they said the projects would assist in developing the region. Uhuru's visit scheduled for this week was postponed to next week.
Tunamkaribisha Rais Uhuru Kenyatta aje hapa. Hawa ni watu wake, aweze kuwaona, waweze kumuona pia, aweze kutembea pamoja nasi na tuweze kuongea kuhusu maendeleo.
Tuna matumaini mengi katika kuja kwake kwa sababu tunajua kwamba yeye atatamka maneno ya kutusaidia.
We are looking at the budget that was just unveiled. So this region would like to have a share of that, and that is what we want to share with him.
And do you think the new currency wears out faster than the previous design? Well, Central Bank of Kenya Governor Patrick Njoroge was put to task with the Senate Committee on Finance and Budget to answer to complaints made by several Kenyans over its quality. Njoroge defended the quality of the new generation notes, explaining that the lower denomination notes were wearing out much faster due to the high rate of circulation. Njoroge further said the new notes were of higher quality than the previous generation, adding that there was no shortage of the new currency.
We are very harsh in treating the currency. Quite a lot of us don't have the Kibet. We put them elsewhere. But the point is that was also considered when we did the design of the banknote. So I want to make the point that in the design, which happened almost 10 years ago, this was something that actually was well considered, discussed, articulated with the experts.
And finally, dozens of people have died in Canada amid an unprecedented heatwave that has smashed temperature records. Police in British Columbia have responded to almost 70 sudden deaths since Monday, the majority of them involving elderly people. They said the heatwave baking the region was a contributing factor. On Tuesday, Canada recorded its highest ever temperature for a third straight day of 49.5 Celsius. That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
All right, so it looks crazy on Kiambu Road this morning as you're trying to connect with the Muthaiga Square. It looks like it's going to take a while. We're now at 4 lanes and counting. Hopefully we don't get any more because you'll be going off the cliff from what I see. But then getting onto Thika Road, it looks like a bit of a drama. The service lanes are looking good, but then you're going to get back to the major highway. The option is to go via Mathare. Go through Mathare. It will give you a better experience. That Magadi Road incident, still dealing with the dregs of that. We still have some traffic then now on Langata Road heading into the city as well. Bagadi Way, not looking too bad as you get to the City Mortuary roundabout, then out through Owings Kodek, coming down Gong Road. That's another story. Which will, okay. Jogo Road also into the city, slow through Landis, but not too bad. This is traffic hour, so let's see what happens in a short while, shall we? Remember Huru Highway, the ramp, Museum Hill ramp closed. Can't use that. Muthidi Road is your option coming out of Westlands. Let's talk. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Let us know what you see. You stuck somewhere, find a good route. Text us as well on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only
it's
way
5
to
minutes
start
to
your
after
day.
8 o'clock. Good morning and welcome to the third of Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. In the room this morning is Eric Latif, Nduoko, Wanjiru Gekonyo, our guest hosts. And we are joined by a new guest. This is John Alan Namu, multi-award winning journalist, CEO of African Censored, and very many things rolled into one. Even now, an activist.
Really? Okay, so I accept the new role then. Yeah.
Everything, eh?
Morning, guys.
Morning,
and good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah, I hope this is a sign of things to come. That,
It should be.
Yeah.
It should be.
Oh, not to say that CT is going to be replaced, but maybe an extra seat can be brought. Yeah.
Now you're occupying CT's chair. Give us today's proverb.
Today's oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of one.
Okay, I'll help you for
Who steals
today.
money will be busted.
Oh, he who steals money.
Very proverbial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Today's proverb: ajifungae kibwebwe si bure ana mchezo. Ajifungae kibwebwe si bure ana mchezo. A person who ties a waist belt, a girdle, is in fact intent on dancing.
Interesting.
When you see them with a kibwebwe,
Yes.
just know
that they're about to dance.
This is not in vain.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So who has won a kibwebwe this morning that you'd like for us to discuss?
Aliyejifunga kibwebwe kuja hapa si bure. Ana mchezo. Welcome, John Allen.
Thank you.
And also welcome to our audience on KTN Home, joining us now for the next 1 hour, in addition to those tuned in on SpiceFM and SpiceFM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. John Allen, Lillian Nabila says hi.
Hi, Lillian. How are you?
She says you're her all-time favorite journalist.
Well, that's humbling. Thank you very much. And huge hello to you.
Dorcas Kimoto invites you to Malindi, says that you're a fantastic guest.
Oh, wow. All the way to Malindi. That's I'll be going there fairly soon.
I'm not going to read the other greetings. That's enough. That's enough for your ego.
Salams. Perhaps you're the one wearing the kibwebwe.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You have come here with the kibwebwe to dance. The conversation that we want to have is conversations that we've been having last couple of Wednesdays. And this is with regard to identification of fake news, with regards to dealing with fake news and getting people to understand what fake news is, what real news is, and how to differentiate. Okay. Today, our focus is restoring trust in journalism in this era of fake news. When we were having a conversation around this, there was some debate.
Yes.
Restoring trust?
I wondered about that preface, actually, when I looked at the poster, because, if you look at all of the polls, or at least most of them, it shows consistently that the public, at least the public in Kenya, have a lot of faith in the media, right? It might be other institutions that are having a deficit in trust. And I'll give you an example, right? So yesterday, President Kenyatta addressed the nation about the new measures that are going to be taking place with mass rollout of the vaccine with Johnson & Johnson and such. And of course, the pledge that by Christmas, 10 million people would be vaccinated. I tweeted that, right? Just almost verbatim what he said. My mentions were full of, emojis with laughing, tears and people saying, "Is this a joke?" I'll wait and see. What that indicated to me, although that's like a very, very rough way of being able to, to measure public opinion, was that the deficit in trust actually is more with the government than it is with the media. That said, there is, and I'm not one to, absolve the media of various sins, right? Especially in terms of its credibility. There is a deficit in trust between the public and the media. And I think it stems from the fact that many times in this race to update the public, a lot of things are taken at face value, are very uncritical, and no time is taken to sort of like sort through what is fact, what is fiction, perhaps even ask deeper questions. Like a good one just of yesterday's example, Patrick Gadara, who I'm sure you know, immediately after the president's statement, went again online and said, look, Africa CDC had been offering about 200 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Why are we paying for our doses even though we're paying for them at a cheaper price? So I think it's the expectation of the public that those kinds of questions would surface almost immediately. And that's a difficult thing to do, right? It's a difficult thing to, to absorb the news, analyze it, and then publish it for the public immediately. I think what needs to happen more consistently is that we ought to start to shift a little bit more towards more analytical, more critical journalism that really gives time to things, or if you don't have the space and time, finds a sort of people who can do that analysis on the fly and give initial assessments of what's happening, so that people can have news that has value, that you can use and that you can interpret for to your benefit in your daily life. That I think is where the issue lies.
Yeah, John, I agree with you, and I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
When you're on mainstream media and now with Africa Uncensored, really, really telling important stories. But isn't what we're talking about really the business? The business side, the ownership side, the investments. You're not going to get analytical pieces, critical pieces, if you don't invest in the research, or if there's an editorial policy that is censuring the asking of certain questions, or that allows questions to be asked for a minute, but not then to be followed up. Isn't it about business interests in the media?
I think it's about that, and it's about all of it, because business interests in the media, okay, this might be an overly optimistic view that I have, but given the space that has been created by the internet, the business interest of the media is almost always challenged by an alternate view that comes from the public, and sometimes, sometimes in the wrong direction, but many times in the right direction. Those kinds of opinions and insights are validated by the public. So you have this role that the public now plays, because it can speak directly to the media, that sort of seems to bring, to raise the standard of the kinds of questions that ought to be asked. That said, locally and abroad, there's this concentration of ownership of the media around people who have a lot of money. I am, of course, speaking about Facebook, Amazon, Google, the big, the FANG, I think they're called the FANGs now, right? And the impact that these organizations are going to have, far and away from the kinds of local things that we're experiencing here. The impact that these people are already having, and these organizations are already having, is such that not only do you have a concentration of ownership of the media, but you have that ownership defining the way we consume our news, right? And a great example is the kind of changes in the algorithms that Google Trends recommends every 3 months, right? It'll start to prioritize certain keywords above others. It will start to prioritize perhaps shorter form content above others. And so you, as a person who is interested in like long reads and that sort of thing, all of a sudden start to see these kinds of things disappear from your timeline. And you start to be drip fed on this diet that is shorter form, or that is in this kind of format. And without you knowing, your kind of news diet starts to get defined, at least on the outer edges, by these kinds of organizations. Now, if you look at it locally, I think that's where the shift hasn't yet happened, where we don't yet have a recognition that, especially here in Kenya, a lot of our ownership is political, and that political ownership has an active and a running interest in the affairs of the country, as politicians should. But that has seeped into the newsroom over years and years and years, and that leaching is now causing the kinds of things that you're seeing, where you have journalists who know that they can go this far but no further. Where you have press conferences where questions are asked and answers are given, but no follow-up is made, right? And you ask why, and you'll be given all of the reasons, right? Like, it's tough, it's an active news environment. But the truth of the matter is that somewhere there's someone holding a leash and keeps on tugging back. But that tension is I think it's good for us to be able to even talk about it locally. And I think that tension will always exist. What we need to have is a stronger pushback from journalists, from people who are interested.
But is that unique to Kenya, though?
No, it's not. It's not unique to Kenya at all. I mean, this is something that you're seeing in the States. You're seeing it in, countries and regions that have repression in their DNA. You're seeing it even in perhaps the more egalitarian societies. For instance, in Scandinavian countries as well, who have incredibly free public, broadcasters who are the ones who dominate, share of eyeballs. But I think it's more a human phenomenon than it is a local one. What we must be clear about is that this is the demon that we are fighting, at least here in Kenya. And we need to be able to figure out a way to ensure that going forward, we give more space to our journalists, to our media organizations, to our commentators, because it's no longer journalists who have the monopoly of voice. And that's a really important thing to do. There's an organization that we need to talk about. I don't know whether we should talk about it, but I have my own views about what they're doing and the dominance that they're going to have.
With all of these things happening in the background, John, and just looking at the consumption of news and information by Kenyans right now, it is that the consumption of news is on the fly. It's on the go. Something comes to you as a headline, wherever it is, on your newsfeed, on WhatsApp. You're very quick to consume it and then pass it on to the next. Very rarely are you going through this process of authenticity to find out, okay, is it true? So long as it has come from a trusted news source, it must be true. Yeah. Right? Without the recognition that some of these things that you're talking about are going on in the background. Who should give the pushback from where you're concerned, as far as you're concerned now? Is it people to say, all right, how do I know that this is true? After all, it has come from the Standard or it has come from, KTN News. I'm going to believe it because previously they've been authentic. Yeah. Who's to give the pushback?
I think it first should happen inside the newsroom, right? So when we're pursuing a story, we need to consider, first of all, do we have all of the facts? Which is the baseline for any good journalism. Do we have all of the facts? And if we don't have all of the facts, are we able to report credibly that we don't have all of the facts, but this is what we do know? That's something that's a tenet of journalism for years and years and years. That you say what you know, and you say that you know that you don't know some things, right? And I think there's new roles that are coming up, or re-emerging, like the role of the public editor, for instance, or having fact checkers actually, looking at a story to see what the sourcing is and that sort of thing. I know the Standard Group is really trying to build that capacity, as is the Nation and many other organizations, right? So it should start there. I think the public should be a co-conspirator in trying to figure out whether these things are factual, and oftentimes they are, maybe unintentionally, maybe not. But it should start with us being able to build the tools and the capacity internally to do this. But you see, journalism is going through a very difficult time now, because it would be assumed that fact-checking is a skill that all journalists have. But then, because of the velocity of information, you have to have the tools to be able to do that. Not many of us know how to use those tools. So it takes training. It takes going through what we were taught in class is the valley of despair, where you go through a period where you know that you don't know and it's difficult, and then start to re-emerge. But you constantly have to learn, and that's a difficult thing to do in any profession.
But I think it's always been there. It's only that, like you said, the velocity now is much higher. There's a shorter news cycle.
Yes.
Because of social media, because of people being able to report what they are seeing live from where they are, and very many people being able to report, the newsrooms are under a lot of pressure. So you get this information. What time do you have? How much time do you want to spend on verifying the information before you go out with the information, or before everybody else has reported, and then you come in and people are like, we already know that. And that's why you see that pressure on breaking the news, or even just running with that headline without much further information, but you find out later that you didn't actually know much. Recently, we've seen what is happening in Eswatini. Has the king fled the country?
Or is he somewhere?
Or is he somewhere within the country?
Sharpening his knives.
Yes. SABC goes ahead and tweets, Mswati has fled the country. Has he fled the country? We see other international media saying what's happening in Ethiopia. Was it a ceasefire in Tigray? Was it the rebels pushing the government forces out? Right? It's being reported, but it's information that has come in. You're processing the information. You want to go out with the information because you are the media and people are looking out to you and expecting the media. So that pressure, how do we deal with that pressure of knowing there is information and there's an audience that is active and waiting for the information?
By changing our approach, right? So I think there's something in the statements that you and Du have said today that, we are we're almost playing catch up with the public when it comes to information, especially in far-flung places. Like, the Tigray example is a great example of where there's no independently verifiable information for you to know. All we know is that there's a situation that's taking place. Now, by changing our approach, it means that you must build your capacity to be able to verify things both in your vicinity and afar. In 2018, the BBC gave us like an inkling into what that could look like. They did a documentary called Anatomy of a Killing. I don't know if you watched it, right? So there was this, video that was online of some killing of some people in a village, and they thought that it was either in I think was bordering Cameroon or Nigeria, and they weren't sure
Which one? Yeah.
Now the techniques that were used to be able to verify just that one piece of video are now becoming more mainstream. So using, for instance, virtual sundials to show which side the person's shadow is falling, trying to look at the topography of a specific place to start to verify what, at least location-wise, where people are. But that doesn't take a short time, right? But you see, it takes an even longer time because the skill set is rare, right? So that's what I'm talking about, changing our approach. If the skill set is rare, we must be able to adapt to ensure that this becomes something more standard. That a journalist walking into a newsroom has, at the very least, an ability to track a hashtag, to be able to geolocate specific incidents, so that they don't have to be on location to be able to verify certain bits of information, because those things are coming in all the time from the public. So we're being left little trails and clues, but it almost becomes like journalists have to become these kinds of detectives in a sense, and try and put these things together. The problem is the time. But I think we have to recognize and be honest to the public that there are things that we won't know immediately, and we have to verify them in a certain way. And when we do, we will have all the facts.
We'll have the information, and that's when we'll come to you with information. Time for us to take a break at 24 minutes after 8. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room on SpiceFM, online and on KTN Home. We want to see how the roads look like this morning, and also the weather situation around the world, before we continue the conversation with John Alan Namu on restoring trust in journalism in the wake of developing fake news situation. Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
It's cloudy in Nairobi at 15. Looking at lows of 12 today and highs of 22. Cloudy conditions in Nyeri at 14, highs of 21, I beg your pardon, and lows of 12. We'll see highs of 23 in Nakuru, where it's mostly cloudy, at 15. And it's raining in parts of Eldoret at 15, highs of 22, lows of 11. 17 will be the low in a mostly sunny Kisumu at 19. It'll go to highs of 26 today. 26 will also be the high recorded in Kakamega. It's mostly sunny at 18. Sunny conditions in Mombasa at 24, highs of 28 and lows of 23. It's raining in Malindi, highs of 28, lows of 24 today. It's also raining in Kampala at 20, highs of 25 and lows of 16. It's mostly sunny in Dar es Salaam at 22. That'll be the low for today, going to highs of 30, and 10 will be the low in Johannesburg, where it's sunny at 14, highs of 21. 30 is looking like the high in Lagos. It's partly cloudy at 27, and 20 degrees in Kinshasa. It's cloudy, highs of 30 and lows of 21. All right, guys, outer ring. If you don't need to, do not, because it's quite packed going out in that direction. North Airport Road, outer ring, coming out towards the Donholm interchange. It's moving very slowly this morning. And then you're connecting with Jago Road, which is moving even slower as you get to the roundabout at City Stadium, and then connecting with Landys Road. So that whole chain, some traffic this morning. The situation on Magadi Road looking a little bit better, coming down towards the Timor roundabout. Shouldn't have too much of an issue, at least not right now. Bagathi Way also looking pretty good. Mombasa Road, Uhuru Highway, then at the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, it's also moving quite slowly. Construction hampering our movement as is. Let's just keep an eye on things. Talk to us where you get stuck. You find a good route as well. SpiceFMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
It's 8:30. Kenya's biggest conversation continues. This is the Situation Room on Spice FM, online, on KTN Home. In the room with you this morning is Eric Latif, Nduoko, Wanjiru Gekonyo, and John Alan Namu. We're talking about fake news and how to deal with fake news from a newsroom perspective. How do we retain the trust of the public that consumes our news in the wake of so many fake news incidents?
Especially when you talk about political agenda setting and the nexus between the newsroom and political interests, like bring in Cambridge Analytica, who have taken this to a whole new level.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of the distrust is that, citizens will be reading between the lines all the time, even if a story is totally valid. They're wondering whose perspective is this? How do you deal with freedom, media freedom, vis-a-vis regulation to avoid pumping in PR, political agenda setting for very dubious... I mean, we saw America was terrible.
Yeah.
Kenya too.
Oh,
we are being spun all the time.
All the
UK
time.
as
Yeah.
well.
And it's exhausting, to try and read between the lines every day. Even as a journalist, it's exhausting. So I get why there's a lot of distrust. The how is the difficult part. And it is because of the, how shall I say, the amount of resource that's being dedicated to spinning, to misinforming, to deliberately lying to people. And you'll see a lot of this as we march forward towards the election, but we've already seen so much of it before. I talked about hashtag tracking. So a colleague of ours at African Sense, Paris Kashahi, did this project with Code for Africa, where they were tracking certain hashtags both in Uganda as well as here. What emerged from Uganda was that a lot of the misinformation, a lot of the fake news about the election, the recently concluded election, was coming from the Ministry of Information itself, right? In Kenya, there were a couple of trending hashtags earlier on in the year about the deputy president and the president. When the president went on to a vernacular radio station and started to talk about the hustler versus dynasty narrative, immediately there were hashtags that were trending all the time. What she found was that there were a couple of specific accounts that a lot of these hashtags emanated from, and a lot of the repetition of those kinds of things emanated from. So what that means is that there are people who are being paid deliberately. So the Cambridge Analytica model has been franchised, and you will see lots of people who, first start by, follow me, I'll follow you, build their, their online presence and their online reach, and then they start to sell these audiences that they have to the highest bidder. And the highest bidder is often the person with the most money in this country or the loudest voice. A great example, let me say an anecdotal example that you ought to pay attention to are the tweets that come from specifically Ezekiel Mutua and the Kenya Film Classification Board's account anytime he has an event. You wonder how he's consistently trending, right? Whenever he has an event. It means that there's a PR team behind all of this messaging. And many times, not that one specifically, but these teams are used to deliberately misinform. How do we fix it? We fix it by, again, just going back to the basics, ensuring that we have the right kind of tooling to be able to track this and to do it on a large scale. We have perhaps what is the most, or what could shape up to be one of the most contested elections in 2022 coming. We know that these kinds of things are going to happen, right? The deliberate misinformation, the hashtags and that sort of thing. What we need beyond that is solidarity within the media itself, right? That we start to think about this as a common problem to all of us. Are there resources that each media house, at least the legacy media houses, can dedicate towards factual information, right? And provide that as a resource to the public. With that solidarity, we'll start to see also there are other problems. For instance, we assume that all of this misinformation happens online, right? But it goes online, offline, to people who don't have the access on a daily basis to the internet, right? How do you make sure that those messages, the correct messages, meet people consistently, right? It might be taking a step back to go forward. Here I'll plug an example, and I'll stop talking after this. We had been working on an SMS platform at Africa Uncensored to be able to reach people who don't consistently have access to the internet and start to ask them questions about their health in the area, what kind of medical infrastructure surrounds them, because the first example, a proof of concept for us was COVID-19. But what we want to do eventually is to make sure that platform is available for people to ask us about things that they're struggling with in terms of facts, and for us to now then turn that around and give them that factual information. You see, but we are the little media house that could organization, right? What if the Standard Group, the Nation, Royal Media Services, all of these legacy organizations banded together to ensure that coverage of the election, at least as an example, could be done in such a way that all of the resources that you have, all of the resources that Nation has can be dedicated to making sure we have credible, verifiable results from the ground. Just as an example, that's a huge opportunity, right?
And I think it calls for the media to recognize this as a danger to its own existence. Because once people start getting information from wherever, and part of what you're getting from the legacy media is also fake news that will come to be corrected a day later or a few hours later with an apology, then we start losing our trust. I personally don't have beef with the people who organize themselves and start tweeting, even the Cambridge Analytica style. It's a business. It's the game they're playing. That's how they're playing it.
Eric, you should have beef with them. But anyway.
I don't have beef with them because in some way, if you look at, for example, what you said, the example that you've given us as Africa Uncensored, right? If you sent out one deliberate misinformation packet in your broadcast, we could classify you as everybody else.
Yeah.
But you were seeking to do something, and you're not doing it just for public service. You're also looking at it at how can I eventually, as a business, monetize this platform so that then I can become a credible news source. It's the same thing that those guys are doing. There's also the other danger that we've seen, in addition to social media and citizen journalism just taking center stage. Legacy media itself, kind of to what Wanjiru you had talked about earlier, the political agenda setting or agenda setting by the big media. Look at the Iraq war and the WMD's conversation. You want to tell me none of the major news organizations could actually just do a little bit of background check or asking harder questions or more difficult questions or what exactly is happening? Are there weapons of mass destruction under Saddam Hussein in Iraq? Has the IEA been allowed to go and check? And yet the information that was coming from these media houses was, there's weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There's a need to wage war in Iraq. There's a need to remove this dictator who's killing his people in Iraq. In the end, egg on the face. So it's all about agenda setting. One media house or several media houses could actually be playing the game of a certain administration, and then the rest of us are just following suit like sheep. How do we distinguish ourselves and say, I'm seeing there's a certain agenda that is being set by the standard group, and I need to bring in my own news and information to my audience that's different from what this person is running?
Gosh, man, that's the big question of our times. How do you ensure that the agenda that is being set is one that can be countered and be countered almost on an equal level? Wow, that's a difficult one. I'd have to say.
What about the independent arbiter, the council?
Well, the media council. It's also difficult for them because how they're set up is so you have the media council, then you have the media complaints commission, right? Within the media council, a lot of what they handle is things that were said, so it's all after the fact. So perhaps what could happen is that the arbiter now starts to take a more active role, and we saw this, the example of. I mean, it's not fake news, but an example where like a very important public interest issue was ventilated was the Shafiweru incident, a couple of months ago, where the Media Council came out and made its own statement, that sort of thing. Right or wrong, as an independent arbiter, it needs to have a bigger voice in ensuring that the playing field is level. What they are doing right now is that they publish newsletters, they're online, that sort of thing, but do they have the right kind of platform to ensure that what we say here, if Ndu comes and says that Eric has, perhaps a bigger set of glasses than he actually does, that after that, the Media Council will ask, will ask you to make a correction or that sort of thing. It takes a lot bigger capacity than they do have. And the way they're set up, I think, is more as a commission that facilitates freedom of space, freedom for people to be able to discuss things, freedom of the press, and deal with things retroactively. Again, it's really just a shift. But then again, you have to ask yourself, because the Media Council of Kenya, in as much as it's an independent arbiter, in the wrong hands, could be used very, very badly. Again, I'll return to the example of the Kenya Film Classification Board. Its mandate in the law is classification of film. The Department of Film Services has a much larger mandate than the Kenya Film Classification Board. And yet you will find that it is the KFCB that has a consistently outsized voice perhaps sometimes even speaking out of turn. So it's the managing of that. So where you have institutions that guide and guard the principles of freedom of the press, you also must ensure that they themselves are restrained from participating too robustly in a space where, with the wrong kind of leadership, with the wrong kind of direction, they then can become an organization or an institution that gags as opposed to frees.
That's always a concern. But then, of course, there's the other the issue of the commercial interest in media. Commercial interest should be regulated.
Yes.
They're regulated in other sectors. And I think in media, it's possibly not that clearly identified as an issue.
Yeah.
Because those commercial interests are driving agendas and are driving fake agendas in some cases.
Yeah.
So yes, it's a tricky balance because freedom, maybe it's about the constitution and the independence of the body. How is it set up? Is the Media Council set up to be able to do a proper role in arbitrating the verifying and ensuring journalistic standards are upheld?
So I'd say that they do have the capacity internally because they have journalists working for them. Their role, yes, would be to help in terms of that kind of verification and to tell, that story that perhaps media organizations aren't doing the job that they're supposed to. So on the one hand, the Media Council, I think it's called the Media Council of Kenya Act 2013, establishes them in that way, and they are. The council itself is populated, like I said, by journalists and media professionals. Now, in terms of policing commercial interests, that's the role of the Communication Authority of Kenya. And the Communication Authority is one of the biggest authorities in this country, even in terms of money, the amount of money that it receives, the amount of mandate that it has. And in ensuring a level playing field. It's done that quite a bit with the telcos, in terms of trying to intervene. But with regard to the media, I don't think that it understands, and not understands. It probably does understand, but it plays a very active role. Let's return to something that I had mentioned earlier, and with due respect to the kind of business that has been created, Safaricom is an organization that we need to watch very carefully with respect to commercial interests, right? So because, let me give you an example. So it has all of our M-Pesa data. And I keep on saying this, I sound like a crazy, exactly,
Yeah.
It has a lot of our, trading information via M-Pesa. It has our call information. Now it's in the space of providing content, right? Meaning that with the kind of transactional data that you have, they can start to create a composite of who you are, right? With the kind of data sets that they have. No media organization in this country has that capacity. Now we have to think about what could happen, down the road, should Safaricom decide to switch gears and become this big conglomerate, right? We have to think about that, because if we get the kind of share of voice that, say, Facebook has in a Safaricom locally, and now they're stretching also into Ethiopia and that sort of thing, then we might have a problem on our hands. We cannot leave it to the benevolence or the people who are there, to ensure that telcos specifically stand guided by the principles of commercial ownership, in terms of their share of voice and that sort of thing. We need to make sure that this is a level playing field, and that's a level playing field for everybody, right? That consolidation is a good thing to a certain extent, but again, you have to imagine these things. And I might sound paranoid, but you have to imagine these kinds of tools in the hands of your worst enemy, right? What could happen? And ensure that you guard against that sufficiently. And that's the same thing that you'd need to do with commercial interests. Yeah.
It seems that there's so many of these elements fighting each other. And if we're just going back to now false information and how then it is presented to people, it seems that there's a lot, again, that's happening in the background that the person who now is looking to consume news and information is not privy to, right? Now, with all these commercial interests fighting against, what we've talked about, possible takeover of data and things like that, again, the information that is reaching the common man who is being influenced, whichever way you want to look at it, is being influenced by the real information, is being influenced by those who want to thwart the real news or information. I am worried that we'll get to the point whereby we are asking people to be very, very critical about what they consume, whereby somebody who is out somewhere in rural Kenya just wants to know what is going on.
Yeah.
Are we getting to the point, dangerously, if you ask me, whereby we're saying the first step then is not to believe everything that comes to you, but then look at it through a critical eye. For me, I think when we get to that point, it's a bit dangerous, whereby we are saying everything that comes to you then, you must critically analyze, and somebody is just looking to consume information, man. Somebody wants to know what's going on
I think
in the country.
we're in a space, it's been called variously, the post-truth era and that sort of thing. We're in that game now. But in these times, there are things that we've done in the past that could stand us in good stead to navigate that, especially as a person on the ground. And number one is the role of the public broadcaster, and I use the word public deliberately, right? It is not. It's not
state broadcaster.
State broadcaster. The public broadcaster's role would be to provide credible information to as many people as possible. KBC has the reach to be able to do so. We need to get political influence out of KBC. They need to be able to make their decisions independently. They need to be independently funded and have the capacity and reach to be able to do that as a public broadcaster. And that's one port of call that we could use. The second, and again, this goes back to what I was saying, it might sound silly, but I think we're now in a space and time where we need laws that guarantee free access to basic internet for everybody. Because the internet is not just a tool for information, for news. It's a tool for education. It's for opening up markets. It's a tool that can be used to change the lives of many people. And that free and basic internet should be guaranteed and provided without preconditions. So I'm not talking about the kinds of things that had been provided by some of these bigger organizations. I'm talking about you go to a specific place, you have bandwidth of a specific amount of time to be able to surf wherever you want and access the internet in whichever way you want it to. I don't think people think that this should be something that's guaranteed before having access to water, but it is something that we should think about consistently.
Yeah.
I think the third thing that we need to do, perhaps as a media, is to start to think about how news is accessed and provide certain basic steps as a public service. So public service announcements around, okay, so you've seen this kind of information. How do you ensure that it's false? Check the website. What does the URL say? If it aligns with your opinions too closely, then it's possible that it's fake news, right? If it's single-sourced or it's repeating something, or you're consistently seeing this on your timeline to the exclusion of other opinions, it's probably fake news. Doing that consistently and just having these sorts of messages continually pushed, you'd be surprised about how impactful that is. Not even thinking about ourselves. I'll give the example of my kids, right? They can be shown one video that says that Michael Jackson was an alien. They're young and impressionable.
Right.
They don't even know who Michael Jackson was like when he was alive, right? So for you to now undo that kind of misinformation, it takes some doing. So you can imagine what impact that would have if our children were able to navigate the internet with the kind of tools and information that they'd require. That would be incredibly powerful in getting us to the next step.
There's the issue of information, the power of information. They say information is power. Well, in Game of Thrones,
Yes.
Queen Cersei says power is power. Information is power, and how you get it. I want to first start by reading this comment by Vincent, who says he is sensing frustration that we no longer hold the card of capturing the mind of the masses. At some point, they lost trust by withholding vital information as you feared the government of the day. Today, people can no longer wait. They have access to information. And then I want to move from that and say, societies have consumed information from the beginning of society. And they've had ways of dealing with fake news and real news. There are rumor mongers in a community who will come and spread some rumor, and people will know how to deal with verification of that. At some point, I actually don't have fear in the proliferation of fake news and whether the society can then be manipulated by that. But with time, people develop ways of knowing how to distinguish real and fake. And I think that it should be left to grow organically, because that's what a society does. This thing of somebody sitting somewhere and deciding, you know what, I'm going to come up with tools that can help you know this is the real, it's trying to control.
No, it's
with
not.
With access and free access to information, let people get the information, let people learn how to know the...
And then critically analyze it on their own.
On their own.
Eric the provocateur
with time.
has visited us. We were on a very good constructive path. I think that the reality is that with the decentralization of information through the internet, through multiple media channels, there's needed the right type of education. So if you have an old model of education that's very analog, that's very fixed on central source of information, that citizen is at a disadvantage. So we have to rethink we have to rejig. And we need information literacy taught. And now the question is, who's going to teach it and how's it going to be delivered? Because without information literacy, then a whole population is malleable, and that undermines sovereignty. Because sovereignty can only be exercised with full knowledge. And if your ability to know is undermined just by your environment, then that is a problem. So the system is rigged against the common wananchi if they are not given information literacy. So it's very undemocratic, and you must democratize access to information.
I hear you, and I completely support that. Democratize access to information.
And the ability to process.
Not to start saying that this is correct information, this is wrong information. Now the thing is, let there be champions of real information, true factual information.
But how are there champions?
Those are then now supported and promoted.
How are there champions of
this
access
thing of
to information
coming up with tools,
without the tools?
This thing of coming up with tools of saying that this is how you shall verify the news, that's now starting to control the masses.
No,
that you're
not
saying,
control.
we don't want to control the masses.
It's to empower.
Yes.
The reason we educate, and what we are saying is that education has changed. It's no longer textbook and getting a certificate. It's about empowering somebody to be able to engage in a digital global world. So if you're not giving your citizens that education, then you're the one trying to control them, and that's undemocratic. And
Eric, you're looking at this at this debate as sort of like an axe to kind of whack your way through to access of information as opposed to a staircase, right? So the tool is a staircase; it's not the axe. To be able to access a higher plane, like Wanjiro says, you need the staircase, and the staircase needs to be built by somebody. And it doesn't mean that the person building the staircase is doing so with a certain objective in mind. You also have to think about what the outcome of that is. It's dangerous to, I'd say it's dangerous to give the access without the tools, right? It's like saying, enter this building, and what you seek is on the third floor. Like I said, there's no staircase. You need to be able to design an education infrastructure that then aids people to ensure that aids people to get to the goal that they seek, and that's important. And we think about it in terms of news, but what if we had a tool, for instance, like a barcode scanner that could scan let's say a bottle of milk in a supermarket to verify when that was produced and that sort of thing. That's consumer information that would be important. That's news that you can use.
Yes.
Right? without designing the tool with a certain intention in mind, a certain purpose in mind, then that tool may never be used. That said, that human beings will always use tools the way they use them, right? So the television, all of these things were invented to disseminate information, that sort of thing. But you'll always find people using it for porn, as an example.
Yes.
You know, but that you can't. That side of the of humanity is irrepressible, whether you try to or not.
Yep.
And the morality of that then is another discussion. But the tools themselves are really important.
I completely agree. What I'm basically pushing for is let the tools develop organically. Let innovation come from the people and not the other way around. That somebody comes and says, this is the innovation, this is how you're going to make sure that you get the tools. The society will develop its tools. The society will innovate because the society has a need for correct and factual information.
But you're speaking of society as an amorphous, group of people. Society is a person. Society is you.
Yes.
Society is me.
Yes.
So if I have an innovation that seeds, that plants the seeds for access to information, then therefore I am playing my part in society.
And kudos to you.
Yes.
Let's say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home. They've been with us since the top of the hour. These conversations continue on SpiceFM into the next hour, 9 o'clock. You can switch over to SpiceFM 94.4 Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Eldoret is 96.7, 96.0 in Nakuru, Nyeri 90.9 and Malindi 97.7. Good morning. Coming up to the top of the hour, as we conclude this conversation, you had a point you were making.
Well,
in closing.
No, I guess the point that I was making is this. Look, the mobile phone, for example, is an innovation that was made to help aid communication. How it is used is a completely different thing. But the intention, of course, is to be able to aid communication. It's the same thing with the tools that you'd use to verify information that is perhaps questionable or needs challenge. You have to have the environment where it's encouraged for you to develop these kinds of tools. It's just like education. I think, was it yesterday, KTN had a very interesting debate on CBC, right? And Dr. Wandia Njoya was giving her reasons for why CBC is not working and trying to design a new system. We also have to be honest with ourselves and say that sometimes access is not enough, right? Final example that I will give. We have an access to information law, right? Right now, Okoa Mombasa
Why don't you do this?
Has...
Why don't you give us this final final after the news.
Okay.
Coming up to the top of the hour, John Alanam will be with us for a couple of minutes into 9 o'clock. Good morning. It's now 9 a.m. Time for us to get the news.
Good morning, this is the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga. As the BBI appeals case continues, the BBI Secretariat, IBC and President Uhuru Kenyatta will be submitting their defense. Today, lawyer Otiende Amolo presents ODM's Raila Odinga's third grievance against the judges, whereas former AG Githu Muigai presents IBC's argument. Lawyer Waweru Gatonye will also defend President Uhuru Kenyatta's position that he can't be sued in person and that the Constitution has never stripped him of the right to be a Kenyan citizen. The commencement of the BBI hearings yesterday saw lawyers lay several grounds for the defense. Teachers Service Commission CEO Nancy Macharia has called on teachers unions NAT, CUPET and KUSNET to accept an offer to increase maternity and paternity leave days in the CBA proposal that lapses today. Macharia says it's part of a review in the CBA, adding that teachers should as well appreciate the fact that unlike other sectors, they didn't experience salary cuts despite the hard economic times brought about by the pandemic.
And while we appreciate the right of the unions to decline the Commission's offer, we urge them to consider the economic situation that has befallen our nation. We also urge the union leadership to consider that as an employer, we have paid full remuneration even when other sectors of the economy were experiencing job losses and other harsh employment conditions as part of the measures to mitigate the effects of the pandemic.
A lead investigator in a case revolving around a letter that purported to expose a plot to assassinate Deputy President William Ruto has denied claims that he listed Interior PS Karanja Kibicho as one of the witnesses. In a cross-examination, the investigator Isaac Ruto said he did not probe whether the president received the letter as it was not necessary because it was a fake letter. He was testifying against former State House digital strategist Dennis Itumbi and Samuel Gateri, who have been accused of publishing a false statement. And finally, the Uasin Gishu County Assembly has passed a budget estimate of 9.6 billion shillings for the financial year 2021-2022, presented by the Budget Committee Chairman Jonathan Ngetich. Ngetich says the budget focuses on 5 issues, including strengthening services in the health sector as well as education.
The county, through the proposed budget estimate for financial year 2021-2022, seeks to achieve the following 5 goals as outlined in the County Fiscal Survey Paper 2021 and the Big 4 agenda. Investing in agricultural production and food security, investing in infrastructure development in roads, water and ICT, investing in cooperatives and enterprise development, creating a secure and conducive business environment.
That's the Newswire. I'm Leah Ubaga.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, so looking better, that traffic situation. Coming off Kiamburu down, it's a little bit easier as you ease onto thicker superhighway. Looking much better now. Coming off of Mombasa Road also, not too bad. Folks have been able to find out the alternate routes to use, and I think that's a good thing. Is it popping out at you somewhere? Do let us know. Also, we can see how we can maneuver. So the Magadi Road situation, a lot better now. Langata Road, however, now is snaking along. And so you get to the Timor roundabout. The bypass has been looking pretty good today. Southern bypass onto Langata Road out towards Kikuyu is all right. The Red Hill Link Road also looking good, as well as now the Eastern bypass connecting with the thicker superhighway. Looks good, guys. Just in case, let's talk in half an hour and see how that may have changed. Talk to us on SpiceFM KE or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
5 minutes after 9, Kenya's biggest conversation gets into the final hour today. Let's start with the day's proverb, which is ajifungae kibwebwe si bure ana mchezo. A person who ties a waist belt is intent on dancing. Ukimwona na kibwebwe, ngoja mchezo. John Alanam is still with us. You were giving us some examples and practical examples of things that you've seen happening.
Wait, now I've lost my train of
completely. I know.
Yes, yeah.
Too.
We were on such
what
a.
was he talking about?
Let me bring something else.
The final example.
Yes, that was the last
it was
word.
The final example.
Okay,
So
one there was the point
idea. What was the final
the
example
misleading point that Eric was trying to make, that society will organically develop its own
way.
And there's a need to protect. Social protection is real. It's there for a reason, and innovation has both good and bad sides, so we always have to check against that. But what I really find innovative and very interesting is the idea of free access to basic internet. And we were talking during the break and saying Nakuru tried this. What was their experience?
So the allegations that there's this cartel of people who would do these confirm messages, where you get a message from some random number saying, confirm you've received this SMS, and it's really just a scam, right? And that's the point.
Your fault if you give that money, really.
And so that's the problem sometimes, that people will use these tools the wrong way. But it doesn't negate the point that we're trying to make about free access to basic internet. But it is who guarantees it, right? Facebook tried this with Free Basics, internet.org, etc. And they were accused of violating net neutrality principles, because to access the internet, you'd have to go onto the Facebook platform, right? Which is what you don't want. But in Kenya, I think we have, if not the laws, we have the institutions that can guarantee this sort of thing. We have the Media Council of Kenya that we've spoken about. We have the Communication Authority, which has millions of shillings in terms of your broadcast fees that you give to them every year that can be dedicated to this purpose. But you also have the Office of the Data Commission. I have problems with how it's set up, and in that it sits under the Ministry of Information and therefore cannot be seen as fully independent, because there's a representative of the CS and that sort of thing who sits there. But were it independent, were it fully independent, this would be some of the places that we sit. I think I have remembered the last example that I was trying to give about access to information, and even sometimes, even with a tool, sometimes it can be difficult. The point I was making was about tenders.go.ke. So that's where you should be able to find all of the people who have applied to procure services for the government. And ideally, you should also be able to find, in an ideal world, the contractual information that pertains to these kinds of things. We are in year what of the Jubilee regime. We still don't have full access to the SGR contracts, to the managed equipment leasing scheme contracts, and to many, many other things. Had we the access to information, for example, that we needed with regard to Thwake Dam, and I think it might have been sitting out there, we just didn't look. But if this was a principle that was inculcated, we would know what the Auditor General is telling us today, that Thwake Dam is getting its water from a polluted resource, and 82 billion shillings might have been saved. So that's the importance of creating the tools, but not just the tools, the environment where access to information can be thrived and can underpin a democratic society.
And I think really, because every time we talk about development, it's not, and I'm going to link this in a minute, but every time we look at development, others say, okay, so we're going to build a road. But I think we do ourselves an injustice when we look at development without looking at the dangers of not developing, right? So in a situation like this, where we're talking about Thwake Dam, for example, the dangers of not having that information far outweigh, being in a situation whereby we're just hunky-dory and just moving along, and then we wait for a report that comes from the Auditor General. I think it is important to look at the dangers of not having access to this information vis-a-vis sitting there waiting for something to come. And I think that when we look at it from that angle, then you see the dangers of not fact-checking, the dangers of not being analytical in what goes out to people. Look at countries that have been plunged into war because somebody got on a public platform and was able to say whatever they wanted without it being checked or verified. Plunged people into war where people were plundered, women were raped. Things that were unmentionable happened. So if we look at the dangers, I think a lot of times you say 82 billion shillings stolen, for example. If you look at what 82 billion could do in society, then sometimes you're able to say, all right, then there is a platform upon which such things then are necessary to be able to be done. Without it, we're just kind of floating through this existence, and then you ask yourself, why?
And having things happen to us, perhaps a discussion for another day is not just the access, but even to who gets to sit in the seat, right? Who gets to talk about the information that we're speaking about. The example would be gender, for instance, right? So if we're even talking about access to information, how much of Jan Mbogwa spoke to me recently about the menses, right? And I realized that because I've only learnt about menses as a biological function, I don't know that much about what the impact could be, socioeconomically, psychologically. And I'm here raising a daughter. So I'm wondering, I should say we, gosh. What do I know, right? But if we were in a situation where these kinds of things would continually be pushed, you'd be amazed at just how erudite our young people behind us would be. And that's always the goal, that we are planting the tree for them to enjoy the shade, right? Yep. And if we looked at it that way, then we'd start to think about access to information, not just as a scary thing, especially from government, coming from this very colonial, system where access is for us only to your exclusion, but for everybody. You'd be amazed at how many flowers could bloom if we did that. And so it shouldn't be threatening.
Yeah, but I was going to say that the Thwake Dam also brings out another aspect that has a bearing on the question of today, on the topic restoring trust in journalism, which is investing in issue-based journalism. Because, for instance, Makueni County has local media now. Yes. With devolution, there's local media all over. There's these plans were in some report. I think it's a national project, though, or is it a county project?
It's a national project.
It's a national project. Yeah. So that was also in a plan. So issue-based media focuses more on issues rather than kieleweke tanga tanga.
That's true.
So our bandwidth is so consumed with politics and is really missing where the flow of money. So my question is, are we moving towards more issue-based media reporting? Because it seems the pressure on mainstream media, because of alternative media, because of internet, is also going to push mainstream media to deliver better.
Yeah.
And mainstream media, I think, has been really reluctant to invest in issue-based journalism. It's expensive. They are not willing to pay. But are we seeing that trend? Or are we going to continue to see stories breaking in alternative and digital media?
I think we're going to see that trend, that, progressively, these kinds of things are going to become important. Think about it this way. Before 2013, and perhaps, my history might not stretch as far back, but I do not recall as many mentions of the Office of the Auditor General in public media as we have today. The Office of the Auditor General is now a consistent voice within the media. Why is that? Because they're dealing with a very important issue, which is how our money is spent.
Yeah.
And these things didn't happen, before. Now we're starting to see that more progressively. But the other thing about issue-based journalism is that it's not sexy. It's not, it takes a lot of reading. It's boring. It's hard work. And you're right, it's expensive. And sometimes the outcome of it would be things that you can't measure in media terms, right? So if someone in Thwake gets clean water, hooray for them. But what does that do for our bottom line, right? So
how does that develop us?
And no commercial interest.
And in as much as that sounds like a very callous question, it's important, because journalists do not eat that good feeling, that you get, right? The extreme
eyeballs.
The extreme version of that is that journalists, like I've been told many times, journalists are kulangi ethics, which is a very extreme representation of this argument. But the point is that we need to also think about how media is going to earn a living, how
to
people,
incentivize.
media players are going to earn a living in doing the good work.
Can I come back there and also talk about the organic thing I'm talking about? For a long time, the expectation has been, that this mainstream media, this giant media houses, the Nation Media Group, the Standard Group, PLC, KBC, then we see Royal Media Services, are the ones that are going to be like the custodians and the ones who shape the agenda in terms of information sharing. Organically, we have seen Africa Uncensored coming up. We've seen Hussein Mohammed. We've seen, what's the name of the other lady who left?
Asha
Mwilu. Right? Journalists who are coming out and taking that agenda-driven delivery of information. And then you are meeting another group on the other side that has been interested in that kind of information. That are willing to support the delivery of such information. So organically, people are turning towards you, and Africa Uncensored has grown in terms of audience and following because there's people who want to see that kind of information.
Right.
And more will develop that way. Instead of saying, okay, so as a Media Owners Association, we should be pushing Media Owners Association to dedicate their resources.
I'm with you on that one.
People will follow where the audience is. And John Allan Namu will see there's a gap here. John Allan Namu will innovate to feed that gap.
That's true.
That one I'm with you.
That's true. Innovation is the lifeblood of journalism, and we've always been at the cutting edge of that. That said, do not let these guys go, don't give them a pass.
They will. You know what will happen? They will now be forced to follow the route that you've taken.
Let them follow it, but let them also uphold the principles that are underpinned in our constitution. You cannot be a media owner in this day and age and start to think in the parochial way that we've seen in the past, right? You must be listening as an owner of the media. You must be listening to what's happening out there.
On the ground, right.
And really be proactive in the kinds of solutions that you're offering. Because much as we will innovate, I think Oriokolo, likes to say, you can't innovate your way out of bad governance. You can't innovate your way out of some of these problems that we are facing. Sometimes it takes the person with the big voice to actually do the right thing. And that's what I think is sorely being missed. That the people who have been our leaders in the past, whether political, economic, or in various other spheres, are just reluctant to take that step, maybe because it's dangerous.
Okay, someone is banging up there, so we've got to take this break and take a look at the weather.
I think I'm being told to go.
Sheesh. This is your cue?
Yes.
Okay, so just say goodbye then.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. Wanjiro, of course, like I said, it's a pleasure always to see you. And Eric, please create an addition. This is a big table.
Don't worry. I got you.
All right.
Thanks for always coming and honoring our invitation to be here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
John Allan Namu, multi-award-winning journalist and CEO of Africa Uncensored, somebody who decided innovation is the way to go and is pushing that communication agenda. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day. It's 19 minutes after 9. Let's take a look at the weather and who's banging up there, whether it's raining, and then we'll be back.
24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is SpiceFM.
As the Kenyans are roared into the home straight here. 4 Kenyan queens have lit up this balmy Bahamian night.
It's where the rivalry is unmatched, where the soul meets the track, where the great are distinguished from the good. An arena where the records are broken.
A new world record. It's not just been beaten, it's been obliterated.
A stage where the legends are born. For Team Kenya, the Olympics is more than just a sport. It is our tradition. It's an event that has put Kenya on the roadmap. The Standard Group lets you watch every minute and every action live in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Because we live for Team Kenya. We live for the game. At Standard Group, sports lives here.
Have you seen them? Am I live?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you.
Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Evan Wasingishi was asking me what channel is SpiceFM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you.
What a beautiful studio, my friend. I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
The weather with SpiceFM.
It's mostly cloudy in Nairobi at 16, highs of 22, lows of 12 today. Light rain in Nyeri at 15, highs of 21. Mostly cloudy conditions in Nakuru at 16, highs of 23, lows of 12. We're looking at lows of 11 in Eldoret. It's raining lightly at 15. Mostly sunny conditions at 22 in Kisumu, highs of 26, lows of 17. Sunny conditions in Kakamega at 22. It'll go to highs of 26 today. 28 will be the high in Mombasa. It's raining still, as well as in Malindi at 25, with highs of 27 and lows of 24. Kampala is raining still at 21. It'll go to highs of 25. Continues to rain in Dar es Salaam at 25. It'll go to highs of 30 and lows of 22. We're looking at lows of 10 in Johannesburg. It's sunny at 14. Partly sunny conditions now in Lagos at 27, going to highs of 30. 30 will be the high in Kinshasa, where it's sunny at 21. Sunny conditions in Beijing at 30. And that will be the high. 20 will be the high in Paris, where it rains at 14, and it's cloudy at 14 in London, highs of 17 and lows of 12. Clear conditions at 27 in New York, looking at a high of 35 today, lows of 25.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
2 minutes after 9, Kenya's biggest conversation continues. In the room with you is Eric Latif, Nduoko, and Wanjiro Gekonyo. Information and the importance of information and what role it plays, and what John brought up there. Do you think it would be actually a good thing to have that guaranteed access to the internet? And can it be pushed so that it's higher up in the order of priorities right now? Do the people think it would be an important priority? Look, a majority of the Kenyan population is in the youthful age. So they're consumers of information. So they look at tools of consuming information. Many of them are using internet as their basic source of information. So that'd be like meeting a need.
It definitely would. I think for me, not having studied this area very well or whatever, is just looking at the basics of. So the number of students who have been out of school at home, struggling to learn, and find there was a little bit of KBC doing its bit and trying to reach young people, but really the way to go is the internet. The internet is how a lot of people are learning, and lack of access to the internet actually creates inequality in terms of your ability to participate in the economy and in really public discourse. So yes, I do think we need to, the state needs to take this up. And that was the whole idea behind the fiber optic cable, the whole idea is to connect the country. It has also come up around elections when we were talking about the transmission of results and areas that couldn't transmit. I'm trying to think. It has come up also in terms of transfers, the fiscal transfers, because very vulnerable households are supported by government. And in some cases, part of the problem becomes how do you reach these households because of lack of access to internet and to data in that case. So yeah,
I do agree, and I think there's so many unforeseen problems that can be solved with that. I'm just trying to imagine that if you had information and communication ducks in a row from the very beginning. Look at what we saw last year, where children were out of school for 10 months. They would have been out of school, but they would have still been able to access learning. Now, when we talk about providing access to internet, for example, we're not just talking about making the bandwidth available. We're also talking about the hardware that is needed for children in vulnerable areas or rural areas or far-flung areas to be able to access this. And can you do that? Absolutely you can. And really, if you want to look at it, all it takes is a little bit of thinking and planning and organization. It didn't need to be, because we have the majority of the children of school-going age in Kenya are in public institutions. It didn't need to be that all of these children took a break in their learning. There could have been something else. Even that thing that we're talking about, KICD giving instruction on TV. How many people, let's be honest, that the minority, that the people who have TV sets in their homes are in the absolute minority in this country. That you may think that you have a TV in your home and I have one and you have one, that we think we're all... No, actually, we are in the minority. The majority of the people in this country don't have that access. So now, when we talk about information and sharing of information, these are the things that we are talking about. And it would be that, okay, can somebody just have a smartphone and access to a smartphone? No, it goes further than that. And so when we look at this information, I think that is it, because the person who coined the phrase that information is power was not on a short thing. They were on a long thing there, and they knew what they were saying.
they could see it.
Yes.
I actually don't think there's much thinking that needs to happen.
No, it's just a little bit.
Because the thinking has already started happening. If you look at the government policies and initiatives on information, when the government invested in a fiber optic cable that landed in Mombasa, the government then rolled out the national fiber optic infrastructure network countrywide, and the idea was let's make sure that there is a fiber optic connectivity to every county in the country. There's already that thinking and heading toward there. The same way Jubilee administration came and they decided one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we increase access to the connectivity to the power grid, and they did that. It's the same thing that can just happen. An administration comes in and pushes it up. This is infrastructure just like any other, where we are building roads, the way we are connecting people with power. This is the other infrastructure, access to internet. And I think there's not much thinking that needs to happen. It just needs to be just
done.
Political goodwill.
It just needs to be
Someone
done.
just comes and says, all right, so here it is. Well, I know Wanjiru will not like to hear political goodwill, want it to be structured. But if the people just come in and say, okay, let's just put this, let's get this done. Have access to the internet. Let every company that is applying through the Communication Authority to run in communication services be given a quota. The same way Safaricom was told, and Airtel and the others, you want to get this license, you shall commit to make sure that there is access, build your infrastructure countrywide.
Yeah.
And they were given a quota. They were told, over the next X number of years, we want to see coverage everywhere in the country. And that is a condition for the license. Same thing maybe should happen.
Yeah, so that their commercial interest also has the responsibility to reach the harder to reach areas.
You can't just tell me that this area has 20,000, 2,000
you just
people.
milk where there is money. No, I think, like we said, Nakuru did it. I don't know whether they're still holding up that free access program, but definitely we first heard about it because we were doing some work and the community mentioned. As one of the benefits they had, I think it was with the previous governor. I don't know if they still have it. It can be done. And when you think about, when you watch, countries in first of all, Kenya is a lower middle income country. Is it really in order that our kids were out of school because they couldn't access learning, holistically?
Yeah.
When other, countries that are a level ahead in their economic tier were able to learn digitally because you're then able to get your homework, you're able to file your homework, you're able to do your research all on the internet, which is something you can't do with TV or with radio. That level of interaction isn't possible. So I think there are so many arguments for this to be a priority for government. It's possibly more cost effective than the infrastructure projects that government has prioritized. It's about leadership thinking. It's about being forward-looking. The last point is I think it's about incentives. Government is thinking about collecting taxes from the commercialization of access to internet and the use of internet, instead of thinking if more people had access, then there are more products that can be created based on that access, and you'll probably have more revenue. So maybe we need looking leadership. And when you say that, then you're like, okay, maybe we sit and wait. So this is it's a campaign issue.
It is.
It might become one of the latest rights. It's not, under the socio-economic rights, it's not there. But the more you think about it, this really should be one.
It's the same. It's access to water, access to internet.
Access to information can be expanded to include access to free basic internet. It can be interpreted. It should be.
It's 9:30. Let's take another break. Malaria and the fight against malaria. So yes, it's gonna get cold. It's drizzling. The Met Department has already told us that yes, you expect a period of light rains and showers going all the way into August. That means water clogging and formation of small water bodies, and we need to make sure that we clear those ones so that we kill the breeding grounds for mosquitoes.
Yep.
This is a community initiative, okay? So as a community, make sure that you don't have water bodies in your neighborhood, because then that sorts you out in terms of avoiding transmission of malaria within your locality. And should you get those symptoms of malaria, do what?
Visit your nearest health center and get the right testing done, and thereafter the proper treatment carried out for you.
So government's concerned about over-the-counter?
Yeah.
It's just those things of, you don't know malaria. We're just dealing with malaria. Kila kitu is malaria. And you are,
and also the dangers of self-prescription are actually quite high, and looking at making sure you're getting the proper diagnosis and thereafter the proper treatment. Because then a lot of the problems that, we've seen from this, even from this campaign, has been that people then have built resistance to malaria treatment because they've been self-medicating all this time. And then when you actually do get a very virulent strain of malaria, the medicine that is now administered does not work because your body has actually now built resistance to that treatment.
So what is the access for the average Kenyan? Because something like, government report of 2017 says something like 10% of Kenyans do not seek medical assistance. If you don't have the means, you're trying to survive your daily meal, not get thrown out of your house. So the idea that you will then pay to get medical attention is not in your language.
List of priorities.
Is this accessible?
Unfortunately, it is not as much as we'd like to see that it is. It is not. And that's a reality that we glare at regularly.
And it's a big thing because now that calls on the county governments to invest more, especially at that basic primary level healthcare, so that someone can just go to a dispensary.
Absolutely. To get this test. That's
you
5 minutes.
are tested, and then you're told you've got malaria, and you put on the anti-malarial treatment. And that's it. That's what we should head to. 27 minutes to 10. Let's take this break, take a look at traffic, and we'll continue the conversations. Good morning.
.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. .24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
There are so many people peddling what is false and that it bears remarkable resemblance to what is true.
Politicians have their agenda, and their agenda is to use every opportunity to sell that agenda and to loot this nation.
I have seen major strides that are done in this country when we talk to each other as against talking at each other.
We start getting back into the tribal cocoons which were put to us by the colonial powers. They gave us physical freedom but not mental freedom. We're still mentally colonized today into these cocoons of tribe.
Now if you live in an area where it's difficult to find a dog,
he's a goat. I kid you not.
In which part of this country is it difficult to find a dog? So that you resort.
Okay, the situation is a lot better now. Many parts of the city. But around, we're looking at now that Awings Kodek, Yaya Center area. There's something going on connecting to Ngong Road coming out there. There looks like an accident there that's held up things. So watch out for that. Apart from that, everybody I think has now gotten into that mellow traffic issue situation, right? Not too bad right now. It's moving where it wasn't before. That bumper to bumper has now become steadily moving. So I think we're falling into the holes as we should. Okay. Just in case it does get out of whack, talk to us on SpiceFM KE on Twitter. Text on 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. SpiceFM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
24 minutes to 10.
Yes.
Talk about it. You're looking at it.
Yes. Page 14, the standard. Cases of minors dying from unsafe abortions rise as law remains unclear. So it's the perennial debates on, unsafe or safe abortion, or the right to, a woman's right to choose. In this country, of course, abortion is illegal, except in certain circumstances.
Yep.
So, but abortion is still widely practiced, in many cases unsafely, leading to deaths. Now, my take on this comes from two perspectives. One, in my earlier life, as a pro-life advocate and an opponent of abortion, part of my beef was that this debate is not always what it appears to be. In that, I think a woman has a right to choose and should have a right to safe abortion, but that should not be the first option. There are commercial interests around all positions, and this is not always out in the domain. And I'll say this: there's and it's quite a big discussion. When you talk about contraceptive-based sex education, which includes access to abortion, access to contraception for young kids, sometimes as early as 8, 9, 10 years old, depending on which jurisdiction you are, it's a mindset. And that mindset also has a huge industry behind it.
Yep.
So the question we need to be asking ourselves, and this is why I was on that pro-life side, and still maybe lean that way, but on a pragmatic way, is to ask, what do we need? How do we deal with sexuality? How do we get the religion and fundamentalism out of this discussion, but look at the girl, look at the boy, look at the needs of the mother, and have laws that are enabling and not driven by commercial interests, and not also injurious to a population of young people. So I know it's a lot.
I know. I think the issue here is checking to make sure that no section of society takes advantage of the laws in place. The commercial side does not come and take advantage of just, the laws in place. But also, like you've said, it's about looking at the right of the individual person. So currently, the law allows abortion in the cases where the doctor determines that the life of the mother is in danger, and then there's the Sexual Offences Act, which also talks about abortion in the incident of rape. But even beyond that, there are many cases where we see young people going for abortion. Why are they going for abortion? Why are they choosing abortion as the way to go? Many of them, it's because of what the society thinks about childbirth and about teenage pregnancy, and how society treats teens who are pregnant or people who become pregnant and they do not want to raise the child. Laws surrounding and access to information on laws on adoption. Is it easy to adopt a child? Or to put up a child in foster care? Is it easy? If people knew that this is an available option, then they could decide, okay, yeah, I'm going to go ahead, carry the pregnancy to full term, deliver a baby, and I'll offer the baby up for adoption.
Exactly.
And they know I'll still have access to this child as they grow up, even though I may not be able to do this. The other one is how the society has conditioned itself around teen pregnancies. A teenager becomes pregnant, the entire village
goes crazy,
completely now.
Scandalized.
Yeah,
and there's
views
also
this
the
one differently.
I mean, looking at it from the two, the boy and the girl, there's also the expectations that your parents or your guardians at that point will take issue with the fact that you are still being taken care of, and here you are, you want to bring a child into that. Because for a lot of people that it is, my parents are going to kill me, so I'd rather look for an option of how to get rid of this than to imagine that situation where you could potentially put yourself in danger poses a lesser threat than that which you're going to go and face at home should your parents have to have you find out that you got pregnant or that you got somebody pregnant. Even so, dealing with that threat is a lot more dangerous to because look at the statistics that we saw. Just a couple of I think I shared this also. The number of anti-pregnancy medication. What do you even call it now?
The morning
after pill that is sold on the Monday morning between the hours of 6 and 1 o'clock in the afternoon is higher among teenage girls than it is among adults. Monday morning, and this is from pharmacies, a study that was done across the country. It is not for a check of for HIV, it is not for treatment of STIs. The number one fear of young women in this country is pregnancy. Why? Number one, they don't want to feel that they've let their parents down in any way, shape, or form. They themselves are still being taken care of. It is not in their wildest reality or imagination that they will start to take care of someone else. There's also the fear that they will be left, as for young girls, there's also the fear that they will be left alone by the partner, the one who, it doesn't even have to be a partner, by the one who got them pregnant. Right? They know that this one is not going to take care of this child. So those three coming together form the basis for why they're going to seek this abortion.
And the support by the society post-delivery.
Absolutely.
If you are in school, that's it. It's the end of your education.
Even though in Kenya it's not. I think one of the
For many people, it's still that.
De facto.
Yes.
In reality.
The reality is, yes, there are schools that are and school heads and communities that are saying, yeah, bring your child, come back to school.
No, the government
itself is
says,
pushing that conversation. Yes.
Not says. I think it might be even in regulation.
They actually did that. They said
you must
go back to school.
Unlike Tanzania, where they do the opposite and penalize the poor young girl. And so they have a lot of school dropouts.
But you see, when they say you must go back to school, there's a lot that they have not done.
There's a lot that
you must go back to school. So what
alone.
kind of support am I getting for me to continue with my education?
Yeah, but
because going back to school, is one thing. Where have I left the child?
It's very important.
Am I able to raise the child? Am I able to bring up the child? If you don't support that, then this girl will not go back to school even if the chief comes and beats her.
And also look at psychosocial support when you go back to school.
Well,
the stigma is a huge deal as well.
No, the point I was going to make is that by government saying that, it has also contributed towards the destigmatization. The issue of maybe affordability and the practical economic considerations is another. But the thing I was going to say is that there is more behind this. These stories come up every so often, and on the tail of these stories comes a push. Usually it will be some legislation in parliament to now go and pass legislation. Why? Usually these stories are part of an advocacy campaign to legalize abortion, to legalize or to mainstream contraceptive-based sex education. The problem is with this discussion is Kenya has two extremes. On one hand, we are very moralistic. We don't talk about sex and sexuality, especially among the young, even among adults.
It's a topic we don't talk about it in the open, but it's being talked about.
It's not a topic that we discuss and recognize that, sexuality needs to be accepted, embraced, and is part of your identity. So there's that extreme. On the other extreme, there's an agenda. There's an economic agenda, maybe even a philosophical agenda by people who want to create a market to sell their goods. Now, in between there is the gap that we should have an approach to sexuality education that is very much in line with who we are, that supports those young girls so that they can make responsible decisions and not expose themselves to HIV and pregnancy if that's not their choice.
Yeah.
So why aren't they using protection? Why are they engaging in risky behavior? That's what we should be dealing with. How do you help this person become responsible in managing their sexuality as opposed to what we are seeing, which is irresponsible behavior?
There's
So
also
I think
another reality here, Wanjiru, and many times when we talk about abortion, people assume that we're talking about abortion by young people. It's teenagers or people in their early 20s who are still in school. We had a conversation with a gynecologist who said, actually, the majority of abortion is procured by adults.
married women even.
Yes. And that is something we also need to address.
Exactly.
If that person has made a choice, it's not about commercial interest or all.
It's about access.
It's about access. Yeah. So what is driving this person to procure an abortion? What is it? Because it's not about, I'll be ostracized. It's not.
They just feel they do not want.
I don't want to have this child at this particular point. I don't want to have this child because of what then it means in terms of my relationship. Maybe this child is conceived out of wedlock, and it's going to be very clear. All those considerations need to be put up on the table. And then we have that discussion. So what are the options? Give me access. Let me make my choice, but give me the broad spectrum of the choices I can make. Not just that, yes, you can go ahead and procure an abortion, or no, you cannot procure an abortion. But if I had an array of choices, I know I can deliver this child, I can offer up the child for adoption, I can deliver this child, I still have support from the society, from government in some way, or I have considered all those things, but still I've decided that, no, I want to terminate. Then let be clear. Not just pushing along just one side of terminate, or
the other extreme.
Or the other extreme of do not terminate, give birth to that child. And then you're not addressing the fear and the main reason that's driving this person to seek abortion.
The psychological
going
or whatever.
all the way, all these things
By the
have been
time
done.
somebody has presented themselves in that facility to get an abortion, trust me, they have gone through the different scenarios in their mind. And they've made that decision at that point, because everything else that you would offer up to them that's available at that point is not an acceptable option for them. That's what I'm saying. They would rather put themselves against the risk of possibly dying, because, again, if you look at some of the statistics, the abortions that have carried out in this country, of all of them, only 30% are supposed to be done, or rather are done or carried out in a safe environment. Right? The rest in a dangerous environment by sometimes practitioners who do not know what they're doing.
Yep.
But that risk...
Because of the law.
But they would rather take that risk than live with the reality of having that child.
At the end of the day, what we're talking about is a woman's right to choose. And whether it's time the country, the laws
facilitating that choice.
And facilitating it in a responsible way from the very outset, which is the appropriate education, so that you're not using abortion as a contraceptive, 2, 3, 4 times a woman's going into abortion because this happens. The moment you're getting into that situation, then you can see there's an irresponsibility and a lifestyle situation. So you need to deal with the whole person. But then also, I think we need to. But of course, we've got a very strong church lobby. Which
the thing is, we have two extremes.
You incur the wrath.
You have an extreme on one end that only looks at it from one angle.
Yeah.
That you are terminating somebody's life. You're killing.
Exactly.
And that is wrong. Period. There's the other side that is saying, you are not allowing me to make a choice. And it's not me. It is you're not allowing that person to make a choice. And you're not looking at what else needs to happen to facilitate that person's choice.
In fact, that extreme is where access to abortion really becomes irresponsible in a way, where then you won't take precautions because I'll pop into the clinic and I'll deal with this issue. Because that's the extreme. It is.
That's the counter narrative that's used to fight that extreme.
Well,
but there are those in that extreme that are just looking at it from a pure human rights perspective.
I should be able to access this thing at the point when I want to access it.
With the right support.
Yes.
So making abortion available needs to happen in a spectrum.
Yes.
of education and access to whatever preventive and protective means.
Can you take this quick break and then come back and continue the conversation? I see Yegon is saying, let us legalize safe abortion. Okay. Let us legalize safe abortion.
Yani, stop talking around it. Just say it.
Just go ahead.
Just say it, yeah.
It's 10 minutes to 10. Good morning.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Living isn't just breathing. Living is about taking it all in. Living is not just getting by. Living is taking the roads less traveled. Living isn't just eating. Living is about the art of whining and dining. Living isn't just doing the mundane. Living is about savoring the finer things in life. Because living is not a chore. Living is an art. In the new season of The Art of Living, we explore unearthed gems and discover what makes them home away from home. Join Nailante Kenga as she engages with exciting guests and tours the most exclusive destinations and homes every Sunday, 6 p.m. on KTN Home.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
All right, the conversation.
Spice up yourself.
8 minutes to the top of the hour. We can take one or two calls on this 0719-012-600. We are talking about abortion. So the report here indicates that there are so many minors dying from unsafe abortions because of the legal situation that we have in the country. 266 women who die per 100,000 unsafe abortions. In developed countries, the rate is 30 deaths per 100,000. In this country, 464,690 induced abortions that occurred in 2012 among women aged 15 to 49. And the number of women who received care for complications from induced and spontaneous abortions in health facilities in 2012 was about 158,000. So is it about time that we have this wider conversation? And so it's emotive, it goes into religion, it goes into beliefs on when does life begin, but then when does life end as well? Life ends when that person procures abortion in a back alley. Ed Gitonga in Nyeri, good morning.
Morning, guys.
Morning.
It's been long. Anyway, I know I've not wished you a happy birthday. I didn't call that time, but very late happy birthday. I wish you had a
Asante
plan.
sana, Ed.
Now, the thing is, as far as abortions are concerned, first of all, they should stipulate what kind of or reason. You should have a reason as to why you're having that abortion. Because I can tell you this, Mona Eric. The reason as to why you're seeing many teenage girls, maybe the ones who are having unsafe abortions and dying out of it, is because there is that stigma in the society. Actually, they usually say it goes like afadhali STI kuliko mimba. There's a stigma in the real sense that even if a teenager would be willing to have a child, the stigma involved in the community, the negativity involved, that child is going to end up procuring an abortion, and because it is illegal in the country, they're going to go the unsafe way. I think we have to make it legal as far as safe abortions are concerned, right? Because it's only that way. It's like I told you some time back, some things we should decriminalize, some things or because we criminalize them, and it adds more to crime itself, because there is that tendency of people doing the wrong thing over and over again, especially when they know it's wrong.
It goes underground. Thank you very much, Ed.
Yes.
Yegon, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Nyeri, City, and Nata Kesti. I'm just forgetting.
City is not in today. It is Eric, Ndu, and Wanjiro.
Yes, and Wanjiro. Okay, about abortion. This thing is normally affects those from humble background.
Mm-hmm.
And these people are the one who they opt for it. That is mostly from our teenage girls from in high school or even at primary level. Because in the poor society we still have teenage girls around 16, 15 in primary level.
Yes.
So legalizing abortion is good because now we can have something called safe abortion. Something which cannot be done in the bush or in homesteads because these parents are approaching us. Remember that I work in the medical sector.
Yep.
And we are seeing this happening. You cannot prevent abortion. What we should be advocating now is for
safety.
Because even the parents at home, a mother can come and tell you that, please kindly do this for me because the father will stop immediately paying the school fees.
Yeah.
The male parent uses it as an advantage to avoid the responsibility of taking back the child to school. That I gave you an opportunity to read, but now you have decided to become a mother.
So can you buy me?
Up to what age do you think, what age of the fetus or stage of the pregnancy should safe abortion be made available?
For now, I think we should have an age limit of like maybe up to 24 years because somebody who is 24 years can take care of pregnancy with no victimization. But here we have a 13-year-old girl getting ready to have a baby. How will she be able to provide for the kid? Yet we cannot. The government doesn't support in prosecuting the culprit. Even the DNA itself, it's up to the individual to...
You pay for yourself.
Yes, you pay for services. So the government cannot. Now,
At what
the child
stage?
affected...
What stage of pregnancy?
Okay, normally a safe abortion is up to maybe around 3 months. That is like 16 weeks. Yeah, but above that, you cannot do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Egon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a conversation that actually requires a lot more time.
I think
and a lot more debate and robust discussion on this. It has not started today. It does not end today.
It's not ending today either.
So we'll bring it up. We will still bring it up. Tomorrow we have some interesting guests to talk to. Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Coming in at 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and Wanjiro will still be our guest host. She'll be here tomorrow. Friday, that Yegon, that one who was talking there, will be here. Right? And he'll be in the studio with us on Friday. Looking forward to seeing you and hosting you, Yegon. Kuja mapema, chai ni mingi, kuja na maziwa yako.
Na chombo.
Hardship. COVID times.
This man is a dairy farmer, so he should be bringing us. Kuja mkono mtupu tufua.
Come with milk.
Yeah, come with milk. Today's proverb as we conclude, ajifungae kibwebwe sibure ana mchezo. The person who ties a waist belt is intent on dancing. And you shall know when they do that, just expect that the next thing they're going to do is
dance.
Start a jig. So you shall know them by their intentions. When they train a gun at you, they'll shoot you. They will shoot you. Be careful. Thank you for tuning into the Situation Room today. Join us again tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. You have music now until 11. And then Sugar and Spice will come at 11 until 3. Monique from 3 to 7. Adults in the Room from 7 until 10. More and more music. And then when Jiroge Konyo will be here tomorrow morning alongside Ndu Oko. This today's version of Ndu and your regular version of Eric. Tomorrow is the first Friday of the week. Good morning. It's now 10 a.m.